Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the Econobox garage. First up this week, I'm going to finish what I started off last week, and then as we continue with the Bugeye build, I'm going to get the steering rack cleaned up, disassembled, and assessed to see what we need to replace, if anything. Starting with next week's video, I'm going to start a monthly series on some of the books that I have in my Bugeye library. So I hope you come back for that one next week. So thanks for joining me. I hope you enjoy this week's video. But one of the things I didn't do last week that I should have done is bench tested my starter. So I'm going to hook it up to a battery here and see what happens. Okay, I have the other end of the cables here hooked up to a battery. I've got the one end on here, and let's just see what happens here. Well, does exactly what it's supposed to do, so I'm going to call that okay. So here's the Bugeye steering rack. We'll take the outer tie rods off. We'll take the boots off, and although they're not cracked, I think I'm going to replace it just for good measure, seeing as I already have everything out. I'll disassemble it, give it a good clean, put it back together, replacing whatever needs to be replaced, and refill it with oil. So first up, I'm just going to take the brackets off. I'll take the tie rod ends off, take the boots off, and then we can keep disassembling from there. I think if I take it all apart, it'll be easier to make sure everything's good and clean. Now, I just realized when I took the first bracket off, you can see the two parts there, there's nothing automatically indexing the bracket to the rack. So before I take the other one off, I've marked it so that when I go to reinstall it, I can tighten this one up in the right position relative to the bracket, and then the other one theoretically should fall right into place. And also when I took this off, I made sure to keep the spacer, which is very important, together with the bracket. So firstly, I would remember where it went, and secondly, I wouldn't lose it. So let's get back to work. Okay, now the brackets are off. I'm going to take off the outer tie rod ends. So I'm going to mark these so I'm able to put them back on in the same position. I'll get those off, then the boots will come off. So here's the right side, stripped of the boot and also cleaned up a little bit. So the boot goes from here to this little ridge here to this spot on the inner tie rod end. Now this is in really good shape. There's no play at all in it, so I'm not going to replace that. So now we've got this side done. I'm going to switch over to the left hand side, repeat the process, and then I can get the rack apart. Now I have the driver's side stripped of its outer tie rod end and its boot. I got most of the grease cleaned off. So next up I've got to remove the pinion from in here, and then I can pull the rack out itself. But before I can do that, actually, I have to remove at least one of the outer tie rod ends. So in order to do a proper cleaning or a thorough cleaning on the rack, I'm going to have to get I want to take it completely apart, which means I'm going to have to remove one of the outer tie rod ends. So I'm going to work on this one here, and you can see it's got, this is the lock tab here, and it's dented down in 3 places, another one on the other side. So I'll just pry those up, and then I'll be able to turn the tie rod end off the end of the rack. Once that's off, I can take this one out and those out. Those are tensioners. Then I'll just take this cover off here, and then I'll be able to remove the pinion shaft. And one thing I'll be doing is making sure to keep track of shims and all that kind of thing. There's shims under this, there's shims in here, and I believe there might be a shim or 2 in this one as well. So I'll just keep track of all that with photographs and video. And so let's get back to work. Slight change of plans. I'm going to actually nail these. I'm going to put these tabs back down and go and work on the other end. By using this end, I can put this in the vise and it'll stop it from turning. I'll just put a block of wood or some rags around it. So let's get that all set up. So this is the cover off the end of the pinion here. There's one shim here, another shim that goes inside, and there's still one shim on the rack itself. So I'll take those off and I'll make sure those go back in the same position. All right, now that the pinion part is out, I can pull the rack out of the case. So there's the pinion. There's a seal that I'll need to replace. There's a shim or a bushing here, a couple of shims on the cover plate, and there's still one bushing inside here that'll come out once the rack is removed. So there we have the rack disassembled. This is the actual rack itself. Pinion acts on these geared teeth here. This is the shell or casing, if you will. That'll need all cleaned up and repainted. And then down here I have the inner tie rod end that I removed. And then this is the pinion assembly through here. There's the shims and a bushing here, a bushing there, and that's just a seal along with this one here. And these are the 2 preload or anti-rattle bushes that are on the rack as well. So I'll give everything a thorough clean and a thorough inspection and see what we have to replace. Well, here we have the steering rack all disassembled and cleaned. And I figured out a few parts I'm going to need to purchase. Here's the right hand side or passenger side bracket all cleaned up, ready to go with its spacer, and then the driver's side bracket, so that installs it. So here's the rack itself, and as you saw earlier in the video, I just left one of the outer tie rods on. Had to take that off in order to be able to take the rack out of the outer case, and that's here. And this is the primary anti-rattle or tensioner, whatever you want to call it. Looks like I may have to replace the actual copper bit here. The shims are good, and it's cleaned up nicely. And here's the secondary one. And again, it's got kind of an odd wear pattern on it, as you can see here. So I'm going to probably replace that one. Let's get a little bit closer on this one here. Yeah, you can see a bit of an unusual or an uneven wear on that one, so I'll replace those 2. Everything else seems to be in really good shape as far as the pinion and the rack itself. One seal here that I will have to replace. So I'll get all those parts ordered, and when they get here, I can put everything back together. So that's all I have time for this week. If you enjoyed the video, please share it. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to hit the little bell icon so you'll get notified when the next video comes out. My name is Ian. This is the Econobox Garage. We'll see you next time.